Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to The Future is Female. This is the show where we find the extraordinary in every woman. I am delighted to introduce to you my guest today. Dr. Wendy Yee has spent nearly 2 decades in education. She has worked in youth development and peace studies, and she brings together academic research and hands-on experience in the classroom. Now, as the principal of Soka International School Malaysia, she's leading efforts to create a school culture that fosters global citizenship and values-driven leadership. But what does that mean? And what does that actually look like in practice? So let's find out. She joins us on the show today, Dr. Wendy. Welcome to The Future is Female. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
So, 2 decades in education. What has not just kept you in this field for more than 20 years, but what drew you to the field of education in the first place? Did you always know you wanted to be essentially a teacher?
Thank you for that question. To be honest, Melissa, I never thought I would want to be a teacher.
Okay.
So my dream initially is I wanted to be a doctor. But unfortunately, I wasn't a very bright student at school. I was struggling academically. I wasn't the A-star student at school. So I love science. That's why I wanted to be a doctor, right? So I love science, but unfortunately, I struggled very badly in my science subjects like my additional maths and physics. So I was thinking to myself, gosh, with this kind of results, how am I going to be a doctor, right? And on top of that, I actually came from a low-income family. And of course, I didn't have the privilege to go for tuition classes, and that makes it even more difficult for me. So, however, I remember when I was, but I still wanted to pursue this dream, right? That I still continue to work hard, but still deep down inside me, I was struggling with low self-confidence, and I was also struggling with low self-esteem.
Because you weren't a good student?
Because I wasn't a good student. And I had this big dream that doesn't match my capability and my ability. So that was a big gap there, right? So I remember those days were really, really bad because, you know, I struggled a lot. But I remember, I think perhaps I was in Form 4 that year. I came across this wonderful guidance, this wonderful encouragement that I read from a book, and it was actually given by my current school founder, Dr. Daisaku Ikeda. He actually said, you know what? The mission of students is to study hard. You need to study well, and you need to aim to enter university. Because when you enter university, you'll be able to lead a contributive life. And that word, contributive life, really, really captured me. And from that moment onwards, I continued to work really hard. And I told myself, Wendy, you know what? You're going to make it. You have to make it to the university. And ever since then, and of course, I finally made it to the university, and that changed my life. So from there, I really feel that, you know, there is this power in education. And education can change someone's life. And I also recall, you know, there's this famous quotation by Nelson Mandela, you know, if you remember. He says, education is the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world.
Absolutely.
So with my personal experience, that how my life changed because of education, the power of education, so then I decided, yes, education will be a field that I really want to contribute to help people, perhaps who are struggling like I struggled before when I was younger.
I mean, I can't believe how full circle it is that you came across this guidance at 16.
Yes.
And now after such an impressive CV, and I have to admit, your CV is wonderful, and you are now in the school that is based on the philosophies of Daisaku Ikeda.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about Soka International School, where you are principal. What are the philosophies that let's not just shape the school and its approach to education, but also what you bring and your approach and your philosophies to the school.
Yeah. So because I went through a hard time when I was a young child, and I remember how the effort, the perseverance that I put in can actually change my life. So I wanted to bring this hope to students who may be struggling and who may be going through what I've gone through myself. So this school, Soka International School, Soka simply means value creation.
Soka means value creation.
So Soka school means, Soka education simply means value creation education. So the purpose of education, like based on my personal experience from what I've experienced, is really about transforming a person's life. It goes beyond just academic results, but it really focuses on how can we bring out the unique potential of every individual. A person may not be born a very intelligent person, a person may not be born with silver spoon in the mouth, but because of education, it enabled the persons to bring out the highest potential in that individual. And this higher potential will be something that this individual can contribute to the society, can make a change, can make an impact, can transform society. And these are the kind of values that I really, really wanted to bring to the school and to bring to the students to enable them to see education is beyond just academic grades, and it is beyond just academic results.
Okay, can I ask you what that looks like? I mean, it sounds appealing that we are creating such holistic, well-rounded children in the course of their education, especially at such a pivotal point in their lives, right? So they're so impressionable and, impressionable. So let's talk to me about what that means in practice. Value creation education. Right. What does it look like?
Yes. So value creation education, it's something like, having the kind of education that helps students to develop the capacity for them to be able to find meaning, to enhance the value of their own life, and to be able to contribute to society, right? Okay. Now, to put it in practical terms, it means to develop students with wisdom, being able to apply knowledge into solving real-world problems. Now, let me give you an example. Like in school, for the geography class, we teach climate change. In biology classes, we teach about ecological systems, stuff like that. So these are the knowledge that students acquire from, attending those classes. But value creating education means you need to have the wisdom to be able to apply this knowledge about ecological system, about climate change, into understanding what are the challenges that people are facing today in many parts of the world because of climate change, right? Because of the flood, and in some countries which are low-lying regions, the agricultural livestock are just, gone, and people do not have enough food on the table. So how can you then use the knowledge that you have acquired and in helping to come up with sustainable solutions to help these people who are struggling, like in a real life situation? So that you need wisdom, right? And this is what value creation education is all about. It's not just acquiring the knowledge, but to be able to apply into something meaningful, something impactful, something that benefit yourself and the community.
Something that can help others, the
Absolutely.
Contributive life.
To lead a contributive life.
Talked about.
Yeah.
Okay. I can imagine that, it's wonderful to think about education in that holistic way, but in a system that prioritizes grades and standardization, are there trade-offs that need to be made?
Definitely. It is not easy because I think in society today, a lot of parents and a lot of students, they still see that, it's as though the end goal of education is all about grades.
It's the A's.
Right.
How many
it's
A's
about
did
the
you
A's,
get?
right? And why did you get 99? Why didn't you get 100, right? So it's really about, society today still, unfortunately, is still putting a lot of emphasis on grades and test scores, right? Well, these are important, right? We are not denying that these are not important, these are important. But we also need to understand how the world have changed, how society have evolved, and what are the challenges that the young people are facing today. So I think in one of the recent statistics, it shows that 1 in 4 children, 1 in 4 young adults or teenagers are actually struggling with mental health. 1 in 4 children are struggling with depression, with anxiety. So is education addressing these problems as well? So if we are just focusing on test scores and grades, so what about this emotional side of the students? What about the well-being of the kids? So if their well-being and if their emotional state of mind is not being taken care of, there's no way this poor child can excel academically. And when this child does not excel academically, it doesn't mean that the child is stupid. You know, some parents will use labels. Oh, you're lazy, you're not doing well, you know. So the labels are always there for the child, which I think is totally unfair, because the society has changed so much, the society has evolved so much to the point that, you know, like social media is just at the palm, right? Yeah. So constantly they are bombarded with tons of information where these young people don't even have the capacity to filter this information and to safeguard themselves yet. Because I think we all know that for young people, teenagers especially, the front part of their brain, which we call the prefrontal cortex, is not fully developed until 25 years old. And this is the part of the brain that helps them in terms of emotional regulation, rational thinking, right? And because they don't have this part of the brain fully developed at this age, there's no way they can manage the emotions, you know, the impulsiveness and stuff like that. And hence, if they aren't able to manage this part of the, you know, this part of the emotions, obviously depression kicks in, anxiety kicks in, right? And when these things happen, and you continue to talk to them about what's your grade, why you're not getting an A, you know, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
So I really would like to see, you know, how education address a student as a human instead of just focusing on the cognitive ability of the student. We also need to look at the affective side, which is the social emotional, the psychological well-being of that side of the child is equally important, if not more important now and in the future than before.
I love that you said we should see students as human, because more often than not, we don't, right? The system doesn't, and maybe the system doesn't allow for it because there are so many moving parts, there's so many children, so they become a number, a statistic, one of many in a class, to standardize kind of operations. But students as human is a wonderful philosophy to bring to the table when you're thinking about educating kids. I'm curious to know about how you deal with parents, because as you laid out, you pointed out, parents can have a certain mindset. Do you think, or have you had experiences where your definition or your approach to what a good school is maybe different than that of parental expectations? Does that clash in terms of when they expect good grades or, you know, academic rigor or all of this, and sometimes it comes at the expense of that holistic development that you talk about?
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of parents these days still have that mindset, which I talked about earlier. So I think schools today, we do not just educate students, we need to educate parents as well. Okay. Right? Okay. Because I think the parents and the school, we should be, we call it co-parenting, partners, yes, right? Yes. We should be partners because, you know, we are, both of us, the school and the parent, we are looking at the same child. So I think it only makes sense that we become partners in educating the child. So, so it's not something in isolation, and it has to happen together, and it has to have a mutual understanding between the parent and the school. And that's why it is so important for the schools to be able to appreciate the values, what the parents are bringing, and the parents will have to appreciate the values that the school is bringing right on the table. So that's the reason why one of the admission process that we have for students coming to our school, I think this is not commonly done in many schools, but it's done in my school, is we have this process where parents will have to come to school and we conduct an interview with the parents to make sure that the parents is actually on the same page with, you know, what we believe, you know, what we wanted to do in school. So I think that kind of understanding is really important because at the end of the day, it's really focusing and centering on the kid. Because if you imagine the school is saying, okay, let's do this, and these are some good values. But when the child goes home, the parents are saying something different, right? And the victim will be the child. The child will be trapped in between, look, shall I listen to my mom or shall I listen to the teacher? The poor child will be confused, right? So in order to avoid such confusion and in order to ensure that the child have a, you know, like a holistic understanding of what the right values are, and it has to be consistent, right? And then from the school back home and back home to the school. So that conversation between the school and the parent is essential. And this is the reason why I think one of our school mottos, so we have a school motto that is to be a genuine learner and to be a global citizen. And this school motto obviously was given by the school founder. And then we realized that when he says, let us all be genuine learners, then we realized it wasn't for the students. Usually when we have the school motto on the wall, it's like, okay, students, this is the school motto, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But we realized the school motto wasn't just for the students. It was actually for the teachers and staff, and it was for the parents as well. Being a genuine learner.
For the parents and the teachers?
Indirectly.
Okay.
Because I think before we can call ourselves an educator, we have to be a learner ourselves. We have to learn. We have to continue learning. We have to unlearn, relearn, and continue to learn. Because the generations that we are dealing with today is a very different kind of generation.
Yes.
I may have 20 or 30 years of teaching experience, but it doesn't mean I'll be able to teach the current generation. So I have to unlearn, relearn, and learn so that I can be able to relate to the current generation. And that's what genuine learning is all about.
Dr. Wendy, can you tell me a bit more about that? How you've seen education evolving, and I understand education will continuously evolve. Technology and pedagogical methods and changing societal needs and values. Right. In your time that you've been in this field, what's changed the most? How have you had to evolve and adapt to what it is today, education is today?
I think first and foremost we have to know what is the center of education. Who should be at the center of education? So the center of education is the students. So every generation students are different, right? I could be teaching this cohort of students, this year, but if I compare the syllabus or the things that I'm teaching, it could be the same syllabus, it could be the same topic, but because I'm teaching a different cohort of students, this cohort compared to the last cohort, even though I'm teaching the same topics, but the way I deliver, it has to be different because I'm dealing with a different generation, I'm dealing with a different cohort. So what I'm trying to say here is, at the center of education is always student. So by knowing who your students are, we will have to evolve accordingly. So, and like I said, the current generation is Generation Z.
Yeah.
They are a very unique generation.
What is it like teaching Gen Zers?
Wow.
Wait, so now it would be, how old are your kids in your school?
I have between, the youngest would be 11 all the way to 17 years old.
Okay. Wow, okay,
Right.
so it would be the really young ones, like a new generation.
The new generation.
The new generation,
yeah. And unfortunately, this is the generation who have actually gone through the COVID period,
Okay,
the COVID
okay.
pandemic. So we definitely see a big, like a big impact, how COVID have actually impacted them. Because, like before COVID, most of these kids, they were probably in primary school or they were in, most of them were actually in primary school, right? Or some of them, when it hit them, right? When the pandemic hit them.
Lockdown and all that.
And
they were taken out of school.
Absolutely,
Yes.
right? And before the pandemic, they were all just, textbook and workbook and teachers in school. But all of a sudden, when the pandemic hit, everybody goes home, there was a total lockdown, and overnight, the kids will have to learn online.
Yeah.
And from not knowing, they haven't even learned about digital literacy. And they were just thrown into this digital world and they're being exposed to everything online, the bad and the good, unfortunately. And because of too much online and screen exposure, kids become so agitated and they become so frustrated and their attention span has reduced tremendously. And some of them even have gone to the point that they prefer to isolate themselves, but we call social isolation. Because they haven't really gone through how does it feel like, to be able to interact with another person, like looking eye to eye, and have that conversation. And unfortunately, because they went through that COVID period, they're so used to this excitement and entertainment and attraction online, because I think a lot of them, even though they are having classes online, but they have another 10 tabs open, where they have different games, there are different social media, all happening at the same time, right? So because of that, their attention span has reduced tremendously, and it really had a very serious impact, emotionally and psychologically on them. So what the kids that I'm seeing right now are these kids who have gone through that. So one of the biggest challenge is screen addiction.
So what does that mean for you as an educator, or for your faculty, your teachers in your school? I mean, how do you see that changing the way you respond to the needs of this generation?
We have to be more patient. We have to be truly understanding. and we have to be able to connect them deeper than what the screens are connecting to them. Because otherwise, obviously the screen are more, you know, colorful, they are more exciting.
It's attractive and it's very distracting, I can imagine, right?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to be playing games as opposed to listening to a class?
A boring teacher.
Yes.
Right? So how do we then be able to get the attention of the students, right? And how do we able to instill that kind of love for learning rather than just being distracted, you know, by those very interesting things which is, you know, happening online. So I think the point here really is, you know, so that's how education, I believe, has shifted.
Yes.
And we as educators, we have to be aware of this shift and how do we respond to that, right? So one of the biggest things, like I mentioned, is how do we connect with the child? You know, on one-on-one, to really have that kind of dialogue to understand the child and what he or she is struggling with, and what excites him and what doesn't excite him, and what are his dreams, you know, and how can we as a teacher and as an educator to really support him to fulfilling his dream. So we are not just the teacher with a chalk or, you know, or with a pen on the board, you know, just talking like that. I think our role has also evolved to the point where I think we are not just teachers, but we are educators, we are facilitators, we are their parents, we are their peers, we are their buddies, we are their sisters and brothers. It has gone to that level in order for us to be able to connect to that child. Right. So this is how it has truly transformed education.
When I think about wanting to really implement this practice, and your school is a boarding school essentially, right?
Yes.
So you can create a school culture that reflects these values. Talk to me about creating that school culture, because it goes beyond the curriculum and all the wonderful things that you talked about with value creation, education. It's about teachers' attitudes and how teachers interact with the students, as you pointed out. It's about how students interact with each other, how they learn conflict resolution and managing their feelings.
Absolutely.
How do you create a school culture that reflects your values and that you can be proud of?
So the first thing that we did was we wanted all the teachers and all the staff involved to appreciate the school culture. We make it very clear that the school culture is not something that comes from top down, and it's not something, okay, students, you need to follow this, this is what the school culture. We believe in being role models. Before we can ask the students to do anything or to follow through anything, we believe that every single adult in the school, the staff, the kitchen helper, the cafeteria helper, the gardener, teachers, every single one, you know, including those who are working in the administration block, the finance office, every single guy, every single one, right? Every single individual, every single individual in the school, the adults in the school, we have to be the role models. We have to walk the talk, you know, ourselves. For example, the school culture is GREAT, G-R-E-A-T, GREAT, which stands for grit, respect and appreciation. So we put it as a GREAT, right? So the GREAT school culture. So let's talk about respect, right? We feel that respect is actually key, is very, very key for an international school, because we have students who come from different backgrounds, different nationalities, different religion, different cultures. So being respectful and being able to respect one another is super, super key, right? So, and how do we do that? So we start from simple things. We say, okay, we have to say good morning to everybody. You know, we see our colleagues, you know, we have to greet good morning.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we have to greet good morning. So initially students were a little bit shy, you know, like, you know, typical Asians is like, But in order for us to be able to create the culture ourselves as adults, being the role model, we have to know the names of our students. We know all the names of our students, and every morning when we pass by the student may shy away from us, but we will actually call the student like, hi, like Miss So-and-so, good morning, you know, things like that. So then the student have no choice but to turn around and to greet us good morning. So even with colleagues, when we see one another every day, you know, in the office, but we still say, hi, good morning, how are you doing? So I think that is a little form of small little actions, but these actions have actually created a big impact. Like every kid right now in school, when they see their friends, when they see the teacher, even when they see public or parents coming to the school like visitors, they will greet them like, good morning, and how are you? So I think, you know, so things like that is, you know, in order to make it into a school, the entire school culture or the school ecosystem, I believe, you know, everyone have to walk the talk. We have to be the role models.
Dr. Wendy, thank you so much for speaking with me today. It's been such a joy to talk to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's all we have for you on this episode of The Future is Female. I'm Melisa Idris signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.